let's talk a little bit about EPR properties because I find that one to be really interesting because it's such a mix of experiential properties, and we've talked about experiential earlier. So it's got AMC, it's got some ski resorts, it's got a lot of Top Golf. So it seems like all of that, not a great thing to have during the pandemic, kind of a great thing to have right now when people are like, hey, what can I go do? Because I want to do something, anything.
Yeah, it's a really unique REIT. They have they focus on experiences. We mentioned earlier their top tenant is AMC. EPR's executive team needs to get on that Reddit board and thank the Reddit traders for pumping up AMC's stock. They need to go ahead and buy some shares themselves if they want. Yeah, they need to say thank you. The Reddit traders have not only, I mean, I'm not going to buy AMC stock. It's a ridiculous valuation, things like that. They have made AMC to the point where they can emerge from the pandemic a stronger company than they were going into it. The movie theater business, people forget, the movie theater business wasn't exactly doing the best in its history right before the pandemic.
No.
I think ticket sales peaked. I want to say 2002 was the peak year for movie ticket sales. And then streaming kind of slowly ate into those. There's a lot of underperforming movie theaters in the country. Those aren't the ones EPR owns. They own the megaplex theaters, the ones that are always full with things like in great locations. But AMC was almost bankrupt. It was pretty much assumed they were going to go bankrupt. We mentioned rent collection and deferred rent and things like that. It got so bad that EPR wrote off their AMC rent as uncollectible at one point. I think it was in the third quarter of last year. They said, we're not going to get any rent. Anything we get is kind of a bonus. So now AMC has raised about $2 billion at elevated valuations. One year ago, AMC's entire market cap was $600 million. Now they could raise $600 million and dilute shareholders by less than 2%.
Wow.
That's an insane change.
Yeah.
And it's allowed them to really, they're raising capital. They want to grow. They're going to hopefully pay off a little bit of debt. Hopefully they're going to repay EPR its rent. But now it's just such a weight off of investors' shoulders in that stock. There's literally no need to worry about AMC going bankrupt anymore. It's just complete. Like the CEO said it was off the table at the end of last year. Now it's really off the table. Now they could probably buy a smaller competitor out if they wanted to. If Regal's theaters are taking too much of their business, they could probably buy them right now if they wanted to. So it's just it's a different world for AMC these days. Their stock price is going to come back down to earth. It just is.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying buy AMC stock, but it really gave EPR new life. EPR they just mentioned that they are planning on reinstating their dividends sometime in the second half. They need to wait for cash flow to stabilize, which really what they were waiting on is for their movie theaters to start paying rent. Pretty much all of their other tenants are doing fine and paying rent. Like Top Golf is a big tenant of theirs. Vail Resorts is a big tenant of theirs. They have a bunch of those indoor water parks that are. I went to one on New Year's with my kids. It was doing great. It was almost too full for comfort, but those were doing great. They're paying rent. They're really waiting for their cash flow to stabilize from their movie theaters before they can remove their debt covenant restrictions, which I don't want to get in the weeds on that. But then they're planning on re-implementing their dividend, and they said they really want to get back to growth mode. They see a huge opportunity here, just like they did before the pandemic. They specifically mentioned things like cultural attractions, like museums and aquariums and things like that, as a vertical they could go after. The golf attraction, Top Golf is growing like crazy.
Yes.
People want to go do things like that. Ski resort, the drivable ski resorts, like I mentioned, are really doing well. They mentioned gaming. They own one casino property right now. I can see that dramatically increasing. There's a big trend toward legalized gaming in the U.S. right now.
Yeah.
Especially if you could pair it with some of the other things EPR already has in its portfolio. One of the casino in the mountains of North Carolina has one of those eat and play businesses attached to it that EPR already invests very heavily in. There's a huge market for people who want to get out right now, and EPR really wants to take advantage. They have $1.5 billion in liquidity, including a completely untapped $1 billion credit line. They paid off their credit lines during the pandemic. and over $500 million of cash. The whole company's market cap
Wow.
is less than $4 billion. That's a ton of liquidity for a company of that size. I always talk about Empire State as having a ton of liquidity. EPR actually might have a better liquidity situation than Empire State.